My name's JP, and I like to read, and I like to talk. My wife's tired of hearing me talk, so I said, I'll just come here and talk to you. So, I'm going to talk to you about the big picture today, and I'm going to start with what I call the secular world's original false premise. Now, thank you. The Christian world has their original sin, and the secular world has its original false premise, and that is that human nature is fixed and bad, and that government evolved to solve that problem. And of course, we know that things built on a false premise are inevitably doomed to catastrophic failure. So it's important to talk about these things and expose these myths, cast them aside, and if you get that idea out of your face, then it's easier to see how a society can be organized around the principle of voluntarism. So in 1642, we have the English Civil War, and you have Parliament, and you on one side with their army, and you have the monarchy on the other side with his army, King Charles. And this time was basically the beginning of the end of the divine rule of the king, and from that point on, after this civil war, the royal family was more of a figurehead than a real political force. And the bloodshed and the fighting had a profound effect on the young philosopher at the time, Thomas Hobbes, who was greatly affected by what he saw, the chaos he saw in his country being ripped apart. And he sat down to write his theory of civil government, and with the image in mind of what was going on. So he looked out there, he saw this fighting, this bloodshed, this brutality, and he thought, man, this must have been what it was like in the state of nature. It must have been just like a state of war of all against all. You know, no rules. The state of nature is what he called the time before a king or a queen or a monarchy, or a sort of a entity that had a monopoly on the use of force to control everybody. And then he goes on to fantasize about how, well, at some point, people must have been like, wait, let's stop. Let's put down our battle axes. This sucks. Let's come up with a better way. There's got to be a better way. I know. Let's all give up a little bit of our freedom, give up a little bit of our autonomy for the sake of the greater good. We'll just give the power to somebody. They will reign over us and keep our violent, natural impulses in check so we can have civilization. And of course, this was the basis of the social contract theory. This is where it stemmed from. And the social contract theory has had profound influence on everyone from that point on, including the founding fathers of the United States. And basically all of social economic policy from that point on was developed with that in mind, that principle, that idea. Which, the funny thing is, it wasn't a principle. See, people think that, boy, this was Thomas Hobbes or Rousseau or Locke. They discovered the social contract. It's a discovery. We found the root of government. You have to remember, no one really thinks about it. This was a fantasy someone made up in their head. And as far as Hobbes goes, this was his feelings on paper. So his book, The Leviathan, or his theory of civil government, he looked at what he saw in his country, horrified his countrymen killing each other, and he basically emoted on a piece of paper. That's all it was. Oh, the king has been slaughtered, what are we going to do? Oh, my country, and he wrote this down. That is the basis of his theory, emotion. And of course, everyone bought this hook, line, and sinker like it is an actual thing that existed, and it still is used today. I mean, we all have had that experience, that unfortunate experience where someone says, well, if you don't like it, then just leave. Just go, just chop down a tree and make a canoe and paddle on out in the ocean, go find yourself an island, and you start, and it's, that ends the argument right there. Don't like it, leave. Like it or leave, you know? And this is an appeal to the social contract idea. So anyway, what is the truth? Well, the truth is that now, since that time, I don't know, 300 years, 350 years, we've had Darwin, and we've had archaeology, and anthropology, and scientific method. And we now know that Hobbes was completely wrong. It was just a fantasy. What he imagined in his head. You know, the funny thing is that no one thinks about how it's ironic that this benevolent Leviathan that he conjured up in his mind was put together in the shadow of his own English Leviathan slaughtering itself. You know, King Charles was thought of as a tyrant. That's what prompted Cromwell and all them to get the Parliament to get their army together to, you know, all Hobbes had to do was show up in the town square and watch them chop the head off that king and hold it up with the blood drip, and he would know how states are formed. That's all he had to do. Instead, he decided he wanted to sit under a tree and have a fantasy, which has consequences. Don't just make things up and claim that's how it is. So anyway, the truth is that thanks to Darwin, we know that we've evolved from a common ancestor of chimpanzees and bonobos. We also know that nature changes over time due to a selection process. And since human beings are part of nature, here's mankind, it means man changes over time through the selection process of evolution. And I'm going to go ahead and quickly define human nature as the genetic infrastructure that is hardwired into the developing brain, into the individual's developing brain through the selection process. It's important to know that it's hardwired in the individual brain, not everybody at the same time. So, where's a good place to start? And looking at Hobbes' state of nature, well, we don't have to look at archaeology, not yet, we will, or anthropology, or modern hunter-gatherer tribes. Let's look at chimpanzees because they're our closest relatives on the evolutionary tree. Look at chimp culture. Well, you would think that if Hobbes were to go there, he'd probably bring a vomit bag because he'd have to throw up every time he saw one of them devouring the other one. Like it's some picture of Dante's Inferno. Is that what we see when we see chimp culture? No, we don't. We see something that has order to it. We see chimps frolicking, having their babies, exhibiting altruistic behavior. We've all seen that. They pick little gnats off each other and then, get the gnats. This is altruism. This is called reciprocal altruism. We see kinship-based altruism. Okay, they don't have a bad life. If you don't piss off the alpha male, you might have a pretty good chimp life. Now, this doesn't mean, now I'll give Hobbes this. Chimps are violent. They're violent. And they're territorial. If they catch you, another chimp from another group in the perimeter of their territory, they will rip that chimp limb from limb. They will disembowel, castrate that animal. And they'll do it. And as long as the odds are in their favor, in fact, this has been observed. Chimps conduct raids. They raid other places for the sake of protecting their resources. This is our evolutionary, genetic heritage. And this was passed on to human beings as well. You see, human beings raid, pre-Neolithic man, human beings raid in the same way. All you got to do is read the accounts of the Plains Indians tribes. That's what they did. They didn't conduct warfare just like meeting on like a Braveheart meeting on a field and going at it. No, they just raided if the odds were in their favor. That was a choice. It was constant, it was all the time, and it was celebrated. We were violent, we were. And now there's archaeological evidence to show how human beings were just as violent, if not more, in the state of nature. But that's towards the out-group. You see, we have this sort of bipolar thing. We have a little bit of bonobo in us, too. Bonobo, like the hippie chimps, they're matriarchal, they're more social, they share lots of things, including sex, with each other. They're down to earth. Chimps are territorial, aggressive, headed by the alpha. So human beings sort of have this bipolar aspect to us, where with our in-group, we're very altruistic. We have empathy. We have bonds. You have to bond with the in-group in order to survive evolution. You can't be battling with your people and then worrying about a tiger coming. You can't. You have to bond together. But the out-group, we're very violent and always on the edge of warfare in conducting warfare. So a strong sense of in-group, out-group instinct had to evolve. And that's easily seen in modern anthropology with groups observed today and through historical records. So we have a strong sense of in-group and out-group, and we're very violent towards the out-group, but we're very solidified with the in-group. Anatomically modern human beings descended about 150,000 years ago. Now, that's not to say that's the same thing as behavioral modern human beings. If you want to see what a behavioral modern human being looks like, look to your left and right. That's what you got. It's a behavioral modern human being. It's important to know this, that since that time of descendant of anatomically modern human being, not only has evolution continued, and there's evidence that suggests that it didn't not only stop at the agricultural revolution, but has continued since that point at even a faster rate. Now, it's hard to imagine that because we kind of look the same as we did a long time ago. But see, evolution, the selection process, when the environment is the selective pressure, changes our features, changes our actual structure. But when other people are the selective pressure, it changes our brains and how we're wired. And this has been going on it has been one flow from the beginning of this, from the descent of man to now. 40,000 years ago, there was a process called the gracilization process. That's where it was marked, the archaeologists found that our bones became lighter and we were smaller. This is can be attributed to the fact that we were becoming more domesticated. We were being more tame in preparation for settling down. Who was taming us? We were taming each other, people. This was a necessary step in order to settle down and become sort of something other than hunter-gatherer society, to be farmers. We had to be able to live in larger groups. We had to be more social. So anyway, brain size steadily increased during that time, and by the time the universal people left Ethiopia, that was the people who populated the rest of the world, there was only 5,000 people, 5,000, that caused everything else from that point on. So settled life, let me quickly talk about that, the first settled life. And I'll give you my resources and stuff if you want afterwards. I have it on my phone. Settled life could be characterized as the conical clan. So you have the first people sit down and stay by a river, and they decide it's more advantageous to stay here and harvest food and plant than to run around and stay in the jungle. It's also risky. It had to be advantageous. It's also very risky because you're kind of a sitting duck. And what happens is, that's 15. You end up being in this what's called a Hobbesian trap. Yes, I don't know if he coined that, but we coined the Hobbesian trap. It's sort of a game theory situation where the clan next door, you have to assume they're going to kill you. And you know they have to assume that you're going to kill them. So what's the answer? You go first and you kill them all. Okay? That is how these clans grew bigger into eventual city-states. One group slaughtering another group. That's it. That's it. And like a monopoly board, eventually one person, through chance or luck, good fortune, monopolized all the territory, and you have the beginnings, the seeds of a city-state. But let's not kid ourselves. It's slaughtering, it's brutality, it's killing. That's how it came to be. And there's archaeological evidence to show that. There's anthropological studies with current hunter-gatherer. That's how they regard other. They don't like each other. Outsiders. And there's no reason to assume that wasn't the way. Pre-Neolithic man. So we have this going on, and eventually you have a conical shape setup. It's called the conical clan shape. Imagine a pyramid. At the top you have the alpha male, or the alpha lineage. And and then as the pyramid expands down, you have the relatives, and then the next of kin, and then more and more distant relatives at the bottom. Now, you have to understand that at the same time the alpha lineage established itself, there had to be something to evolve to make sure no one takes over, no one kills the old guy at the top, no one takes over and establishes their own lineage as the elite genes in the clan, and that is religion. So at the same time, it's very easy to say, it's one thing to say, don't kill me or my offspring because I'm bigger and stronger, but soon they get old. So what's going to happen next is they're going to have to pair up with the spiritual mystic leader and say, don't kill me or else the spirits will take their revenge on you in the afterlife. So imagine generation after generation of this going on. Eventually it's going to be instilled in the young, and they're going to have a fear. They're going to respect the elders, respect the head of the clan, because of mystical reasons as well, along with them just having, maybe the guys having more force, more power. So this is how the killer clan, the conical clan, worked, and then this is how this formed, as you can see, the embryo of the modern state. And there's archaeological records. As soon as people started settling down, they could see by looking in the grave sites and how people were buried that some people had more than others. That this person obviously was more valued than this person. Look what they're buried with. Look at how they're treated and buried. They also look at the houses and stuff, like how things were set up. So, to conclude, you can see how once they get big enough, do you think that there's a lot of work to get done. There's a lot of labor that has to be going on here. Do you think that the alpha legacy is going to do it? Do you think the alpha male is going to go out there and take care of all the farming? No. Who are they going to get to do it? Well, the people at the bottom of the pyramid and the people who somehow managed to survive their attacks, they all filter in, and this is what begins the steady process of human farming that continued for the next 3 millennium after that. So, in conclusion, we can see that human nature not only changes, obviously, thanks to Darwin, but recent evidence suggests, and I'll give you the resources for that it changes as society gets more complex and more people have to live with each other. We have evolved at a faster rate. And governments did not evolve to benefit the greater good. They evolved to benefit the elite. And in my next talk, which I plan on doing another one, I'm going to talk about the two directions humanity took. Mostly all over the world, it took one direction, which was the way Egypt went, which was a monarchy. It was a logical conclusion from the conical clan shape in the city-states, a monarchy. One guy protecting their lineage, their genes, everyone else subservient to it through threats and mysticism. There's one place, very interesting place on the planet, that didn't follow that for a long time. Had a very successful civilization. It was a civilization that evolved in the Indus Valley, called the Indus civilization. And next time I'm going to compare them, the two, Egyptian civilization versus Indus civilization, and contrast what went wrong with both, why they failed, or certain stages. Egypt had an early period, a middle period, a later period. I'll talk about the early period, and how they were organized, and what this has to do with voluntarism. So, any questions, I guess, you can go ahead and ask now. Yes?
Have you read Steven Pinker's book about the Better Age?
Yeah, that's one of the books I read, yeah.
Okay. I was just curious because some of the ideas that you were talking about were similar and along those lines.
Yes, I got a lot of information from that book. Anybody else?
So this is what you see science and history saying about voluntarism, but what do you think?
About voluntarism?
Yeah, how did you come to these values and stuff?
Well, that's a long story.
So it's not like, one easy thing they can just name, like...
Yeah, it's definitely like a building of different things, religion being one of them, But,
Evolution.
evolution, seeing how people treat each other just by seeing lots of, being around lots of families, lots of kids, and what I do, and just observing that, and just everything kind of starts to make a picture after a while.
How much of our evolution do you think is voluntary, and how much do you think is sort of like subconsciously forced upon us?
You mean biological evolution?
Just any, however you view evolution, but
Well, evolution essentially is results from the female selecting who to mate with. So, females select based on resources. I mean, what I'm talking about over, generally,
we're
like,
talking about survival.
yeah. So it's like, if you do not really, if you don't have the right, peacocking, in a sense, like, you don't come to the table and say, look what I can provide for you, the female's not going to want to mate with you, okay? And what counts as being able to provide changes as the culture provides. So females are the ones that pick human nature. And this is a part of the females, and I've told this to my wife, that they're basically God. They pick. They're goddesses, If you can make a human being, do I want that to be human nature? Do I want that to be the lineage from now on, this behavior, or that? That's all it is, because that's how it's been since the beginning of time. So is it voluntary? Well, yeah, females voluntarily choose who they mate with, pretty much. I mean, of course there's exceptions. Of course there's arranged marriage, and there's all sorts of other things and unfortunate situations where women are forced to be with somebody. But in general, and we're talking about like over the span of human evolution. So remember, since agricultural revolution, it's been like what, 1 second on an hour clock or something, So generally, it's the female who decides how we evolve. Which is good news.
About that particular point, I mean, at least for most of recorded history, that's been the opposite has actually been true, right? And so until pretty recently in the industrialized West, at least, women were considered property in transactions for, estate gain, right? So it wouldn't be accurate to say they were able to choose who they mated with. And I'm not sure what the evidence says for pre-agricultural society, but I don't know if we can really come down one way or the other of who had more bargaining power in those kinds of relationships. So I was wondering where, I guess, what time span you're saying generally women choose?
Well, time span, yeah, you're right. I mean, I'm thinking of like the whole, a lot of my mind is focused on agricultural revolution. That's where we spend most of our time. As far as post that, well, I don't know. I don't know what to extent, females, it's different in different parts of the world. Their freedom to select a mate or to mate with somebody or not, I don't know. I'd have to think about that more. I'm sure that, like I said, there are situations where females have no choice. They have to. They're not considered. They're subpar. They're like less than men. Yeah, of course. But as an aggregate, on the whole, I don't know how that would all level out. I'd have to research that and get back to you.
So I'm curious about your what that teacher told you about big picture versus detail, and if you, looking back, if you feel like, oh, you evolved, or yeah, you're still the same and it doesn't matter, or they were totally wrong the whole time, or what?
Doesn't matter. I didn't really become interested in things until after college. Like, I don't know, I think I had an upside down sort of existence. Like, when I was supposed to be curious and really fascinated by things when I was in school and where you get grades for it and stuff, like I just wasn't. I just wanted to, I had obviously other things on my mind, I just wanted to play guitar and be cool, and I was just not interested in that stuff. So I don't think it's the fact that I couldn't see it, it's just I didn't care to at the time. It was not interesting. It wasn't a priority for me, But I don't know whether that, it's just odd that he said that, but I really like the big picture now. I'm obsessed with maps, and is it related? I don't know, I'll never know. Maybe somewhere down in my subconscious it is, but I just remember that letter, that report card, And, you know, as my wife knows, I always walk around having these big thoughts in my head about these big overarching theories and maps and stuff like that. So, could be related. All right, thanks a lot, guys.